All right, team, we're live from the spaceship. Still broadcasting out of the spaceship, aka the studio. This is where all of the best podcasting gets done. Welcome to my channel, which is about in-home elderly care. This is for you if you happen to be going into a season of life and you find yourself needing to help somebody out in your life. Doesn't have to be a loved one, but I always say most likely it will be a loved one, and I also say it doesn't have to be a loved one. And I like to use my case study of Ruth C. Kenton, my grandma, as I go through this video series. In every episode, I come in and we take a couple of things and we look at it and we say, hey, this is what you might be looking at if you get into taking on the task of doing in-home elderly care. You can check some of those live streams out. They are on the channel. And, you can watch them once or more than once. You can review them. You can send me questions, which is at the end of all the videos. It's in the video description. And I will also be mentioning that at the end of this video. There's many multiple ways for you to get my information. Also, if you wanted to just put a question in the comments, that also would fly. I'm making moves here, team. I don't know how else to be more clear about it. Yes, so in-home elderly care. So the situation, as you've heard me describe, for me was that my grandmother in her aged last years needed to stay at home. She didn't want to go to a facility. We've talked about maybe a facility is the best situation for you. As a matter of fact, I was speaking to somebody this weekend who had a sister, and she's her sister's primary caretaker, and her sister is in an assisted living facility. And the reason why that is because she's got, I don't know what I'm forgetting the term. It's right on the tip of my head, but it's like progressive Alzheimer's. It's Alzheimer's, but it's whatever they call it, advanced maybe. It's when it's in the latter stages. And I've done a video about that and talked about that. Alzheimer's is definitely a condition where you're going to want to seek professional medical attention. That is too much of a lift for anybody or even a group of people who do not have the proper training or background to deal with that. I mean, and you can YouTube other videos, whether they're talking about doing elderly care or not, and see, how difficult that can be. And I know I've mentioned a couple of different stories, not from personal experience, but stories that I've heard from others who had personal experience dealing with a very difficult condition like Alzheimer's, where they tried to do it themselves and they couldn't. It was too much. It was just way too much. So with that being said, today, just like in my last video, I got some questions, or I got a question that we're going to go over and talk about. So without further ado, let me flip over. Nope, that's not what you're supposed to be seeing. Hold on. And cut. There we go. Let's see if that's taking the right page now. Yes, it is. Great. This question says, my mom has been... No, that was last week's question. Another error. Oh, man. Hold on. Cut, reframe. Hold on. Oh, all right. Stand by. Let me do some on-the-fly work here, team. It's live. We'll do it live, right? Yeah, so that's what I'm looking for. This one right here that I got. Boom. Stand by, team. We're getting there. I didn't say it would be perfect. Maybe I should. Maybe that would be the next step, is to say that it's going to be perfect. All right. I'm almost there. I'm getting so close. All right. This is not in the correct font, but we're going to let it roll, baby. Roll, baby, roll. Okay, here we go. And boom. That is this week's question. And it says, how do I know if the caregiver we've hired is the right fit for my dad? Are there any red flags we should be watching for? Well, the short answer to that is yes. There are red flags. We should talk about it. So here's something that's a little bit different when we're talking about the care of a male versus a female. And this is my thought. This is my take. It's my channel based off of my experience. Not that you cannot find a male to fit this role. You absolutely can. They're out there. And I wouldn't say that that necessarily by definition is a red flag. But I would say a female in this role is optimal, okay? It's especially optimal when you have a female customer, okay? But even when you have a male customer, I still think a female is optimal. And I say that because I think that more times than not, females are more acclimated to doing this kind of work from a mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. So as just a jumping off point for this, it's not a red flag. And hey, you know what? That's another piece that can fit into this, which is red flags. Well, what exactly is the condition of your father? And just even before we talk about what the condition is, what is the overall physicality of your father? Okay, if your father is of average male height, 5'9", 5'10", somewhere in there, okay. Maybe your father is 6'7", though, okay, and that's its own thing, right? We know that males tend to be taller than females, tend to have more muscle strength than females. So that's something to keep in mind as you're vetting who would be proper for your father and could possibly be a red flag. If she's 5'1" and he is 6'7", again, not all, but most times that's not going to be a proper fit, especially if the condition of your father is in a place where he needs physical assistance doing things, much like Ruth had, especially in the last year of her life. For me, I'm around 6 foot, and Ruth was like 4'11" at the end. I think she spent most of her life being around 5'1" or so, but you shrink as you get older. Physicality was not a problem for me. And frankly, it wasn't a problem for any of the helpers that we had helping to care for her, who were all female, and none of them were even coming close to being as short as she was. I think the shortest individual we had assisting her, she might have been 5'5", something like that. And Ruth also weighed, I think she weighed like 94, 95 pounds. Very, very petite, very thin. That's the other piece. How tall is this gentleman? And then how much does this gentleman weigh, regardless of his height, especially if you need to have those physical elements at play. The customer is bedridden and needs help going to the restroom. The customer needs to be lifted up and taken to the shower to be washed. The customer needs to be assisted going to the table to eat or whatever it might be. Needs assistance getting in and out of the car. Could be a multitude of things. Okay, so that's the first place I would start. Is seeing if the actual physicality of the customer is, and the person that you're considering bringing in to do the job is even off rip going to work. Because if it isn't, then yeah, that's a red flag, and you should consider looking at other candidates. In terms of their demeanor and more of the softer skills, yes, you want someone that's kind, you want someone that's patient, you want someone that has all of the qualities that you would have in mind as you're thinking about, hey, just generalization, like who do I want caring for a loved one of mine? Well, somebody that's going to be caring, not somebody that's got good bedside manner, somebody that's going to be understanding, someone that's going to be trustworthy. Sometimes trustworthiness isn't something that you can know offhand, because as we know with all relationships, no matter how long you've had that relationship, it only takes a moment of untrustworthiness before you question the whole thing, right? So that's a little bit harder of a thing to vet, but I would say as a good jumping off point, we did this for Ruth as well, is, hey, spend the money, run a basic background check on whoever the individual is. I can't remember because it was several years ago. I think I paid a couple $100. We had a couple of people that we interviewed and I took a picture of their driver's license and ran a background check. One individual we passed on, and it wasn't even that she had anything nefarious per se. It just, sometimes, just getting hits on a background check is enough to say, I don't know what exactly this is, but, it's enough to know that maybe I should keep looking. And that's the other piece about hiring someone and knowing if it's a good fit and checking for red flags. And, it's got to be an enthusiastic yes from your end if you're the one actually doing the hiring. If it's like, well, I don't know, and, well, I've got to make a decision and I'm not sure. Yeah, I know that you'll get to a point where you eventually definitely have to make a decision, but just starting out, it should be an enthusiastic yes. It really should. And if it's not going to be an enthusiastic yes, then you need to really ask yourself, do I absolutely need to bring somebody in right now? Or like here's what I'm saying. Get to the bottom of why it is you're not able to determine if you're enthusiastically saying yes, or if yes is even the right answer. Like I'm saying, if you even need to bring someone in, or just whatever the situation is. But everyone that we brought in, we had a great instinctual feeling about, okay? And I want to separate that, like, instinctual, going with your gut. Everything seemed on par. It was a measure of the personality that we were, and feedback we were getting from them when we were initially speaking with them and vetting out the process, but also everything else added up. So asking them, hey, what's your experience, or what do you do? Some of the people that we brought in had experience in the medical field. Others didn't. But for Ruth, she didn't need a specialist. She really needed more, which I would akin closer to like hard skills, knowing how to set up an IV, or even more rudimentary than that, which I probably in the medical field that is rudimentary, but like take blood pressure or something like that. Use a stethoscope. She didn't need it, and we had people that were trained and knew how to use basic medical devices. But she didn't need that. She needed somebody who was going to be kind and trustworthy and could do some of the things that I mentioned earlier, which is just help her to the bathroom, help her to get dressed, help her to go to the table to eat, that kind of thing. Yeah, so you should get an initial. You should feel some way about it. Again, I'm a big fan of enthusiastic yes, and not just in this world, but in all things, especially when you're making big decisions. This person is most likely going to be in close proximity to your loved one. This person most likely is going to be spending time alone with your loved one, okay? It's most likely, and more situations than not, going to be a big decision. Just like for any big decision that you make, you need to feel a certain way about it, and my baseline on that is it needs to be an enthusiastic yes, and then anything short of that, well, there's your answer, but without knowing what specifically is the condition for this father, I'd say those are, some of the basic things you should look out for with red flags. Yeah, you've got to make sure the person can physically do the job. You've got to make sure the person, like I said, their background and stuff adds up. You got to make sure that they can make the days that you want them to come at the times that you want them to come. And then it's not that, and like I said, enthusiastic yes and all of that, and vet them and all of that. But even if you do all of that and it turns out not to be a good fit, okay, great. No worries. Make an adjustment. You can make an adjustment. You can bring somebody else in or whatever. And your biggest point of feedback for that is going to be your customer. And your customer, you might encounter, and I don't know if I would say this is most of the time or not really at all, but let's say, just to be fair, we'll split it right down the middle and say 50-50. There's a 50-50 chance your customer is going to be apprehensive about this because, again, this is in-home elderly care. So the place that they're going to be at isn't neutral. It's going to be at your house or the customer's house, most likely, okay? So intimate areas. And if the customer's giving you feedback on whoever they're bringing in, you should listen to that, okay? And if you're not listening to that, then I would say you have a red flag. And if you're listening to that and they're giving you some feedback, especially if it's negative feedback, you should consider that a red flag. All right? So great. I've got more questions that I will do in future videos. But again, if you have a question, let me go to this slide here. If you have a question, there it is, Mario at the Alpha Tower. You can hit me up. You can give me your name and location, email, put a comment here in the video, and I will come on air and answer it, okay? And maybe at some point, one of these days, I'm going to get some of Ruth's other helpers to come on here and help me answer the questions. But it's got to be a good one, okay? I can't be calling favors in, y'all, for some middle of the road stuff, okay? Give me some fire questions when you send them. All right. Thank you, everybody. Y'all be good, and I will see you next time. Peace.